It is one of the more obscure commandments in the Old Testament, one that I doubt any one of us in the Christian church would even know about, except for one thing. Jesus lists it as one of the two greatest commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. And this is your daily devotional for Saturday, November 23rd, 2024. In our congregation, we recite a summary of the law nearly every Sunday. During Lent, we recite the Ten Commandments as the summary of the law. During the rest of the year, we recite a summary that Jesus gave us, which we read in Matthew chapter 20. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." The first of these commandments comes from Deuteronomy 6, part of what is called the Shema. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might." The second part of the summary comes from an obscure law in Leviticus, part of what is called the Holiness Code. What connects these laws in Leviticus chapters 17 through 26 is the theme that Israel must be holy or set apart because God is holy. What Jesus quotes is from Leviticus chapter 19, verses 17 and 18. "You shall not hate in your heart any one of your kin. You shall reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt yourself. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Aside from the fact that Jesus was able to quote a brief portion of an obscure law in Leviticus, apparently off the cuff, this brief commandment tells us a lot. It comes at the end of a brief series of commandments in Leviticus that tells us and tells the Leviticus what not to do. Do not steal, do not lie, do not cheat or defraud, do not hate or take vengeance or bear a grudge. This short section concludes with the positive command to love one's neighbor as oneself. In other words, to love one's neighbor is the fulfillment of the laws related to our relationships with one another as human beings. But notice how the law ends. I am the Lord. That adds a dimension that is subtle but easy to miss. Love of neighbor is about more than simply treating our neighbor well. It is also about our relationship with God, and it is about the nature of who God is. To say we love God but hate our fellow human beings is to reveal that we do not really truly love God. For if God loves those whom we hate, what are we saying about our regard for God? Clearly doesn't say much. It says we lift our own judgments about people above God's judgments. In other words, we declare our judgments to be superior to God's judgments. When we put it that way, it's obvious that hating one's neighbor reveals only that we do not actually love God the way we say we do. And as for the nature of who God is, the letter of 1 John reminds us, "Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love." To love our neighbor as oneself, then, reflects the very identity of God. In practical terms, it means that as God's people, we are to cultivate the practice more and more of seeing our fellow human beings not from a limited human perspective, but as much as possible from a divine perspective. We see our neighbors, even those with whom we disagree in every possible way, no longer as enemies, but as fellow children of God. Imagine what that would look like if Christians actually took that seriously. it would make all the difference in the world. When we return Monday, we'll dive into the 6 commandments regarding our human relationships. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.